Holy God almighty. We go to a VTR of the angle between the Thrillseekers and the Heavenly Bodies. Of course, the Thrillseekers were presented with a cake on television from their fans, and I come out and knock them, and they smash my face in the cake. And then suddenly on a fan's camera, trying to get an autograph from referee Mark Curtis, a little kid, suddenly sees the Thrillseekers being attacked in a parking lot by Jim Cornette and two men with masks over their faces. Because the Heavenly Bodies were supposedly banned from Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and also because they were actually on the road for the WWF, so this was well done in full body suits. But we beat them up in the parking lot, and then that's where we come to the Thrillseekers promo with Lance Storm and Chris Jericho from their kitchen table. So Lance nor Chris, neither one, had ever done television interviews before because they'd never been on television before. They'd worked independents, they'd worked in Japan, and independents in Canada. They'd never even been in this country, much less on television. And I'm not knocking Chris or Lance, either one, when I say this, because they have publicly come out and said this. They knew how to do moves before they got Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but they didn't understand working. And especially Lance, because he got to spend more time there, but they were still so green. And the interview was, we were there for a while, and it was the best one we got. But basically, this whole match was booked. And then, of course, me and the Bodies do a promo, and I do about 5 minutes completely off the top of my head of old-time Southern heel bullshit with some 90s references. You know, but that's the whole idea behind this match was I brought the Thrillseekers in off seeing that video. And we got the paperwork done because I thought sooner or later the Rock and Roll Express's time will run out, and I've got to have a babyface team ready to go. And these guys look like $1 million. They're dynamite. They're so athletic. We can settle them down like we did with Candido, like we did with Glenn Jacobs, like we did all the green guys that we got and we put in the pools to be trained. I said they can be slowed down and they can be smartened up, and personality will come out. But I've got to establish these guys as a team because there's so few babyface teams, and these guys are fresh and new. And plus, I figured they'd be pussy magnets, as I've mentioned, and there were issues with that. I won't go over it now again. But, you know, they didn't understand the whole idea of selling the gimmicks and selling your gimmick at the merchandise table. Anyway, but so I had them go over Well Done in a preliminary program so that Rex King and Steve Dahl, they were fairly experienced. They could teach them a little something. And then I had the Heavenly Bodies back for a week from the WWF to put them over in all the towns every night, including on television, to really kind of break the Thrillseekers into another level. And, of course, that's the same afternoon that Chris Jericho got in the ring to practice a shooting star press and broke his own arm. So what we have here after the promos, and the entrances are clipped because of the music. But obviously we had the big introduction for the Heavenly Bodies and their music, and we're getting ready for the Thrillseekers, and the Thrillseekers music plays, and all of a sudden the curtains at the back of the Knoxville Civic Coliseum part, and out comes a race car, and it's revving its engine, and the spotlight is on it. And it's the old misdirection play. I'd planned this from the start, where everybody's looking at the fucking race car, and we think the Thrillseekers are in the race car, and then suddenly they jump from the back door, they jump into the ring, and they jump start the match, and the lights come up, and everybody blows, and off we go. Well, which is what happened, except when the lights come up and the jump start, besides the fact that Chris and Lance, and once again, this is not a knock, but as I go back and look now, after having seen them come so far in the past 25 years, they are both greener than fucking chlorophyll, and one of my baby faces has a broken right arm, and he's right-handed. So this is the classic match that I thought this was going to be. Is anything but if you're looking for a great match. This is, if you're looking for a great match where everybody's on the same page, this is fucking horrible. Because did I mention my baby faces are green as grass and one of them has a broken right arm? But especially for any of you aspiring young wrestlers out there, if you want to see the process of a veteran heel tag team leading two baby faces by the nose, telling them every move to make and what to do and keeping this thing together when it should have gone off the fucking rails at any given moment. This is possibly the best example I've ever seen of that. And we had JR cover the fucking arm broken thing caused by a motorcycle accident. You know, these guys are Thrillseekers, right? They do all kinds of daring shit. But for 15 or 20 minutes, the Heavenly Bodies, they could have had a match. They could have had a match with the legless guy in the AEW Battle Royal. Two paraplegics. But at this point, I'm convinced Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Del Rey could have had a match with anybody in the world because they did. They shine Lance and Chris with teamwork moves that Lance and Chris have never seen before, and they're telling them to do it. The old Southern style shit that poor Lance and Chris both were, but they're shining them with that. Chris is trying to throw left-handed backhand punches because his right arm is broken, but they got him through the shine. Then they got some heat on Lance, and Jimmy Del Rey's work was so sharp and so underrated. They slowed it down a little bit and took their time, and they hit Lance with everything under the moon to build for the tag, finally the hot tag to Chris. And, of course, Chris makes a shitty left-handed comeback, but that wasn't the fucking problem anyway because we were going for 2 sets of heat because this was going to be the big one. Chris makes a little comeback, and Tom trips him, pulls him out, and runs his head into the post. And, of course, as we all know, being that his right arm was broken and he's right-handed, he went a little bit too deep in the well. So now I've got 2 green baby faces, one of them with a broken right arm, and he's about to bleed to death. Ladies and gentlemen, I think, what do they call it, the Muda scale? Yeah. He looked like a tomato that had been thrown through a screen door. When have you seen more blood on one human being live?
Never.
It was, and I'm like, oh, fuck. Well, but it got the people. And see, here's the thing. I've told this story before, but it fits here. A month earlier, on a spot show in front of 300 people in Eastern Kentucky, I had seen Chris do a fucking deal where he charged into the corner and the heel moved and Chris dove and he went over the top turnbuckle, hit his head on the ring post and fell to the floor in one motion. And it looked good. And I immediately told him, don't ever do that again until I tell you. Because you dumb shit, you just risked your neck in front of 300 people at a fucking high school gym in, fucking nowhere, Kentucky. But that looked like $1 million. So the next time you do it is going to be in front of a big crowd and you're going to get juice off of it. And it's going to be the turning point in the match. Well, we had the big crowd. We needed a turning point in the match. This is what I had planned ahead of time, but now he's got a broken arm. He can't do it. So Tom just pulled him out and posted him like we did everybody else. But he gets fucking juice. And now the second set of heat has not only thrown the fans off because now they're like, oh, wait a minute. We thought the guy made the tag. We thought it was going to be over with, but also now he's pumping blood that everybody can see. This is fucking serious. And now shit starts you can feel the vibe in the fucking crowd. Remember, people started getting, oh, wait a minute. And it's a little more serious. Now fucking bodies are all over Jericho. And I told Hildebrand, go in and start checking for a blood stoppage. And Jim Ross was brilliant on this call. The blood was everywhere. The heels are vicious. The referee's checking him. Jericho's selling like a fucking wet rag. And finally, Hildebrand stops the match ring the bell. It can't continue. And actually, Hildebrand wasn't being assertive enough because the heels kept trying to get in front of him. I wanted him. I was screaming at him, drag Jimmy Del Rey back and look at him better and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the match is stopped. He's about to declare the bodies, the baby faces. And this one thing, Jericho, he started begging a little too. He was inexperienced, but he started begging a little too alertly after he'd just been a dish rag. He was supposed to crawl on his knees and weakly tug at the referee's fucking pant leg and look up and be shaking his head and just make the praying motion. But instead, he's all animated now, but he's still losing a lot of blood. But he's begging. And that way Jim Ross can say, my God, the kid, he doesn't want to quit. He doesn't want to lose it this way. The kid's got a broken arm. He's losing blood, but still. And then, and of course, my crack production team from the Tennessee Production Center completely missed this shot, and it was a 4-camera shoot. They didn't have it on anything somehow. But while I'm bitching at the referee for restarting the match and Jimmy Del Rey gets all over fucking Jericho again, me and Tom are bitching at the referee. Lance Storm hits a super kick on Jimmy Del Rey and knocks him backwards over Jericho, who just grabs his leg and gets a quick 1, 2, 3, and the place blows again. They didn't expect that. So how would you describe it, Brian? Like I said, it was a shitty match for being a smooth match. It was an incredible display clinic for a heel leading green baby faces. And it was a spectacle at the end that ultimately got over just because of the level of violence involved.
It was a good match building, and then because of the blood, it took a turn none of us expected. So we all thought there, at least I did, it was a great match because of the spectacle of it, because of the blood. There was so much blood. It was all over Brian Hildebrand. It was all over the ring. It was everywhere. And, we didn't realize yet in the crowd that he had, we noticed he had the cast, but we didn't even realize it was a cast. At least I didn't.
Well, it was a fake, it was a plastic cast. It wasn't plaster. It was one of those tape on restraints because they wanted to he knew he couldn't work in plaster. He came back to work. He was planning that night to work the rest of the week out because Johnson City was the next night, and he had to go back to the hospital and have surgery after this fucking match, so he didn't get to do that. And then the next night in Knoxville, or next night in Johnson City, that we started the Heavenly Bodies against Lance Storm as a handicap match. And I've got that match on tape too. The Bodies led Lance for the first 10 minutes. He kicked the shit out of both the Bodies together and got over like $1 million. And then they cut him off and started getting heat on him. And as he started selling, we ran Tracy out to jump up on the apron and milk for the tag. And that turned out to be a better match than this one was. Anyway.
But again, you're looking at it with different eyes because you were a part of it. You know what you intended for things to be. To the average person, it's a great match.
Well, to the average person, the next one ain't going to be.